Hello, everybody. Welcome to the live today. You don't need to stay stuck in grief groups. That's what we're talking about. You don't need to stay stuck in grief groups. It is not uncommon for grievers to jump from one grief group to the next. They constantly are going to the grief groups because that's where they feel most comfortable. I think also, this is just me. I don't know. I could be totally wrong. Sometimes we're not being challenged in the grief groups in our grief. We can get lost in the cycle of the grief group. We can get lost in what's actually going on in the grief groups. And so it feels comfortable there. We find a home. Don't let me offend you in any way. Grief groups are great. I'm not saying they're not great. They are great until they're not great anymore. And I want to be absolutely clear. Grief Study Hall is a grief group. It is a grief group. But there's a difference with Grief Study Hall. Of course there is, because it's my group. That's number one. No, I'm just kidding. I do a teaching of a lesson. I teach a lesson. I'm teaching the definition of grief. But even with that, we can get stuck there. You show up. You listen. You share your pain, but nothing changes. You go next week, you show up, you listen, you share your pain, but nothing changes. Why? Because you are supposed to be completing the loss and brokenness that's in your heart. You're supposed to be going after the brokenness that is in your heart. So let me write that out for you. So you've got the grief group. You show up, right? You show up. You listen. You become the listener with ears. You're so good at listening and you understand what everybody else's grief is about. You share. I said you share. You share your pain. You share the brokenness. But sometimes what happens is nothing is changing. You're still feeling stuck in your grief group. I can't say that actually happened to me because I did not go to grief groups, but it was one of the things that happened to Erica. Sometimes what happens is, a lot of times with grievers is they go in and during this part, the share part, it becomes too overwhelming for them and they just can't listen to it. They can't lean into it. And that's true. It happens. It absolutely happens. In Grief Study Hall, we teach, right? So aside from this, we teach. And what am I teaching? I'm teaching the definition of grief. So I built a space that looks like an absolute classroom so that you can come in and that you can learn. You can learn what grief is. But I have grievers that do Grief Study Hall. They do Sunday grief group at church, right? They do widows. They do children's. They do husbands. I'm over exaggerating this, right? They do Wednesday grief group. Why? Because they're wanting to do something with this grief, but they don't know what to do. We can't see it. Sorry, Aida. Thank you, my love. Thank you. Let me put it closer. We can't see it. You can't see what? So you have all of these grief groups that grievers are doing. They're going to all of them. That's not going to move the grief and the pain in your heart. It's not going to move the grief and pain in your heart. I want to say something to you, and I want you guys to hear me. If you get anything from today, this is the most important thing I want you to hear. The number one thing that a griever needs to do at the beginning of their loss is talk. Grievers need to talk. Not just nonsense, not just grief group talk. In the beginning, grievers need, thank you for the gifts, guys. Grievers need to talk about what happened to them. Grievers need to talk about what was going on the day they got the call. You need to share about what it felt like to have your son call you and tell you to get to the hospital. What did that feel like? When you got to the hospital and the doctor walked out of the room, what did that feel like? What did you feel like? Because I tell you, there is healing in the story. There's healing in the grief story. Here's the other thing. I was working with a client the other day and I asked her, I said, have you ever told your story? Have you ever told your grief story? And she was like, no. Have you ever talked to your dad? Her dad was there that day. Her dad was the one who drove her. Have you ever talked to your dad and found out what his grief story is? I want to tell you guys something. It wasn't just my grief story. It wasn't just that I got a call from Brittany that Austin had drowned. She didn't tell me he drowned, but that Austin was missing. It wasn't just my story. Erica had a story. Keith had a story. Brittany had a story. I want to tell you something. And I've talked to all of them intently. And there were more. My parents had stories. There were more people there. The other day, Brittany heard me sharing something here on the TikTok live. And she's like, Mom, you shared that wrong. Because there was a part of Brittany's story that I got wrong. And it was a huge part of the story. There's a lot of times that I tell you guys that Brittany says, I lost Austin. And I say all the time, she doesn't know why she said it. And that was the part she said I got wrong. She said, I absolutely know why I said it. I know why I said that. So we're going to grief groups. If we're not talking and sharing our grief story, we're just showing up, listening, and we're sharing a little bit, or we don't feel comfortable sharing, and we go to multiple grief groups, you're going to be stuck in your grief. Hear me out. You're going to be stuck in your grief. And I'm not saying this just to say, hey, look at me. I built a great grief group. Because you can get stuck in grief study hall. You can get stuck in grief study hall. I'm admitting it. If you are not getting anything out of it, if you're not changing things along the way with your grief, if you're not making a little adjustments in your grief, you're just coming for the stories and just listening, you will get stuck in grief study hall. I promise you that. I promise you that. Cynthia said, we all have stories. It's so hard to get through this. I appreciate you being here. I love that you're here, Cynthia. Cynthia has an amazing story as well. We all have a grief story. You guys, sometimes the grief story starts with where you were the moment you got the call. I think a lot of you have heard my story, but I talk about it from being at the open house when I was selling real estate, being there and having Brittany call me. That was the beginning part of my story. Okay, I'm just going to throw this out here. I do grief study hall every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. I teach inside the grief group. I teach. We talk. We cry. We tell the truth. We learn how to process the pain. We don't just sit there. I bring something different every single week. I'm not saying that's what they do in other grief groups, but that they don't do that in other grief groups, but you have to question yourself. Or are you just sitting in the grief group? Okay, that's what the class is today. Let me teach that. I want to start with this. The world is not making space for your deep grief. It wants you to perform the healing. It wants you to perform on the healing. It wants you to be the perfect person that you were before the grief happened. Friends, my mother, we were attempting to put my mother on palliative care, but they placed her on hospice. Because of her comorbidities, she actually qualified for hospice. And today I spoke with the chaplain. He called me today. He's setting up a meeting to come and meet her. And I had to answer some questions for him. And he asked, it really was interesting. It's questions about the family and where we are as a family, different things about the family. And one of the questions he asked me was, do you work? And I said, yes, I'm actually, sir, Funny you should ask that. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, my love. Funny you should ask that. Um, I'm a grief specialist. I teach an educational program on grief and loss to women. And he said, so he started to say his little spiel, which was great. He said, some people really have a hard time with that. Thank you, baby Ruth. Some people really have a hard time talking about death. And I said, this is what I said to him. Isn't it strange that we're all only getting out of here one way? I don't know another way that we get out of here, out of this place. The only place that I know is that we die. That's how we get out. We all know that to be true, but it is the number one taboo subject of society. Nobody wants to talk about it. The world doesn't make space for deep grief, but you want to know the truth? You're not okay. You're barely surviving. And every time you go to the group and you tell the same story over and over again, you leave wondering why nothing is changing. That's what I hope for you is happening in these lives, that you're learning something, that along with Grief Study Hall, you're also able to come to these lives and learn something. Everything that I'm teaching is from the definition of grief. Because telling the story is important. It is absolutely important, but it is not the same as completing your grief. It is not the same as doing the action steps needed for your grief. You have to do the work. You have to learn how to grieve. You have to learn what the work is and how to stop letting the grief run your life. That's number one. In the beginning, the grief is real. In the beginning, you don't want to hear anyone say, hey, girl, go to a support group. I wouldn't want to hear that. I'm laughing at myself because that's what I did to Erica. I was like, I think I know what we need to do. Thank you, Aida. I think what we need to do is send you to grief support. If you've been waiting for a sign that you need to move your grief in some way, this is it. This is that sign. I'm calling it out right now. I'm inviting you to come to Grief Study Hall. I'm inviting you to share grief in a different way. Also, I'm going to make Grief Study Hall more of a floating throughout the week, so we have other opportunities for people to come into Grief Study Hall. I was so mad when I was told that. Tracy says, I was so mad when I was told that. Yes. I didn't know that I was actually going to be causing more harm to her, but I thought that that was the best thing. One of the things that we want to talk about is we want to talk about the story. We want to talk about your grief. We want to talk about your confusion, your resistance, and your exhaustion. To bring all of the parts that you are tired of, to bring all of the parts that you are tired of and the parts that you are pretending, all of the parts you are tired of and the parts you are pretending. This little girl, Sandra, she asked me so many deep questions. I'm going to answer it. She says she wants to know, how do you know if grief is running your life? She's asking for a friend. You're so cute. What does it mean to start doing the real work? What does that mean? Guys, I'm going to get to your questions. Please just keep posting them, and I promise you I'll answer them all. Let me say this as clearly as I can. If you've been to every therapy session, if you've read every book, if you've joined every support group, and you're still feeling the grief pain, you're still feeling the pull of grief, then you're probably stuck in grief. What is that? It feels like a heartstring. It feels like when you hear your person's name, when you hear someone say Austin, you feel it there. When you think of a moment in time or an event that you had, you feel it there. When you feel like there's a moment in time where you really want to talk about it, and you have Debbie said she wanted to talk about it, but you have no one to talk to, but you feel it deep in your heart, that's not moving beyond the pain. That's absolutely being stuck. I'm not talking about you, Debbie. I'm talking about people that really want to talk about it and don't have any place to go. No, I'm not ignoring your comment. If you've been to every therapist, you've read every book, you've joined every support group, and you still feel stuck, it's not your fault. Did you hear me? I said it's not your fault. You've been taught to survive in this grief. You've been taught to survive in this grief. We are being told that you will feel like this for the rest of your life. Hold on, little girl, because you're going to feel like this for the rest of your life. And that, my friend, is not true. That is a lie. That is a lie we tell ourselves. That's a lie that we buy into. That's a lie that we hear other people say. You will not be like this for the rest of your life. The system has failed us. Humankind has failed us. They do not understand what it means to grieve. They got stuck. I kid you not. They got stuck in 1970 on the 5 stages. There's other theories out there, but in 1970, the 5 stages came out, Kubler-Ross, and they got stuck there. And then I've seen 7 stages. I've seen 13 stages. I've seen stages. They got stuck. They heard that thing called stages and they got stuck right there. Then they tried to twist and turn the stages. It is not your fault that you have been taught to survive and not heal. Think about that. You've been taught to survive within your grief, not how to go after it and heal it. It's the system's fault. It's our culture's fault. But I want you guys to know there is a difference. And I teach a difference. I teach a way out. Let me ask you this. Do you want comfort or do you want healing? Do you want comfort or do you want healing? Do you just want to get to the spot where you feel comfortable, where this string is not pulling at your heart, where you can say his name and it's like, it's not so bad? Do you want to get to the part where you can go to the party? Babe Ruth says, I want both. Where you can go to the party and everybody's having a grand time. This is what comfort would look like. Just walking in the door of the party is comfort. Everybody's having a grand time is comfort. But that's comfort. And you are also thinking the thought, I really miss him. He would really enjoy this party. You're thinking the thought. And then you feel it in your heart because you think it first and then you feel it. Or do you want healing? Let me show you what healing looks like. You go to the party. You are comfortable going to the party. You walk in and healing looks like this. Hey, Mary Jo. Oh, hey, Mary Jo. I'm really missing Bob today. He would have really enjoyed this party. I'm so glad that you invited me. Thank you. You are able to say his name out loud. You're able to talk about him. You're able to share about him. The string is still there, but we cut it. It's been cut right here. We cut it. It is no longer connected to your heart. That's the difference. That's the difference. I see you, Sandra. Hold on. I'll be right there. Do you want someone to listen or someone to teach? I think both. I think you want both. I think you want someone to listen to you and you want someone to teach you. You want to learn. Because here's the deal. The only way out of this, I know, right? I don't know where that came from. The only way out of this is through your heart. We got to go through here. Sorry about that. Did you see me hear me say, oops? The only way out, and that just came off the top of my head. The only way out of this is through your heart. Do you want a place to talk or do you want a place to grow? Do you want a place to just be able to talk or do you want to grow in this grief? Because sometimes we can get stuck in that. because study hall is that place. It is. And I didn't come here just to brag about study hall. I want to talk about all of the things that we need as a griever to get through the brokenness in our heart. Grief groups are great until they're not. They are absolutely great until they're not. They are comforting. They are familiar. They are safe places. They are a safe place to cry. There's a safe place to be heard. But if you have a thought in your mind that I'm going to go to this grief group for the rest of my life, it wasn't intended that way. Grief was never intended to be a life sentence. You were never intended to go to the grief group for the rest of your life. They absolutely serve a purpose. Grief serves a purpose, and it is to pass through. It is to pass through our heart. We have to go after this. If you think you're just going to grief group is just going to get through your pain, to get through some kind of pain, you're in there for the wrong reason. The grief group is for you to talk and share your story. That's the normal, typical grief group. It's for us to come together as grievers, right? Come together as grievers to have someone else listen to us and hear our story. That's what they originally were designed for. And I really want to say this with love. If you think that just going to a grief group is going to get you through this kind of pain, you are doing it wrong. I've seen too many women keep showing up to the same circle week after week, year after year, and still feeling just lost. I see women going to therapy and staying in that therapy for a very long time and don't see their grief actually moving. I'm not saying that every therapy is like this. I'm just saying there are some out there, and I'm not knocking therapy. I love talk therapy. The difference between the grief support group and the grief school is that I'm teaching. It is one where you talk about the pain, where I ask you deep questions. It's one where you learn. It's one where you're learning to heal. It's one where you are doing the work. I'm over here guiding you. You are doing the work. I want to back it up for a second. Let's talk about why this matters. It totally matters. Most grievers go to the first type of group. As soon as their person dies, whether it's your child, your spouse, or your sibling, your parent, you don't know what to do. You just want the pain to stop. That's your first thought. I want this pain to stop. When I first started doing lives, I had a beautiful guy come on here. I just want this to stop. And we're talking about the pain. I meant to put pain in there. I just want the pain to stop. When I first started doing lives, I had a gentleman come on here and he said, my mom just died. My mom just died and the funeral's tomorrow. Should I be over with the grief after the funeral? Friends, come on. The gentleman literally thought he was going to go to his mother's funeral and the pain would be gone. That he would do the funeral and the pain would be gone. He came back in a few more times. I still remember his name. He came back in a few more times, and I think he was just so shocked that he was still having the pain. When our person dies, whether it's your child, your spouse, or your sibling, or your parent, all you can think is, I just want this to stop. So you reach for whatever you can, right? So what do we reach for? We reach for therapy. We reach for our journal. We reach for church, God, and I'm going to say church family. We reach for them. We literally want them to come and do something. That's what I wanted. And yes, the other thing, we reach for grief groups. We do all of this and more. Some of us reach for alcohol. Some of us reach for drinking. Some of us reach for food, recreational drugs, prescription drugs. We do whatever we can to make this pain stop. You're told to talk about it. You're told if you do give it time that you'll get better. You're told that if you do talk about it, you'll release all the pain and you'll get better. Talking is just the first part. Sometimes when someone is telling me a story, I will say, how did that make you feel? Why did you try that? Keeping busy? Absolutely. Why did you do that? Why do you think you did that? Why did you go in the room and close the door? I don't know. I've never thought about that. Why did you go in the room and close the door and cry all by yourself? I don't know. I've never thought about that. Oh, I know why. I didn't want my son to see me grieve. But wasn't your son grieving? Like sometimes we got to get into the story to figure it out. But here's what no one is telling you. Talking about the grief is just talking about the grief. Everybody I meet, every griever I meet, I want them talking first. I'm not saying don't talk. Talking is talking, and it's so important. You got to talk about the grief. You can talk about, I want you talking about your person all day long. I want you saying their name so other people are saying their name. I want you to tell your story. I want you to tell your grief story. I want you to tell it about the time that you got the call. But hear me out. You're not going to go tell your story to every person who's standing in front of you. You tell your story to the person who has the heart with ears. These are big old ears. You tell your story to the person who's ready, willing, and able to listen to your broken heart. See what she doesn't have here? She doesn't have a mouth. She's not sharing back with you, trying to fix you, trying to change everything. She's not doing all of that. What she's doing is listening. So we have to be very specific about how we share and when we share. So I want you telling the story. I want you to tell your grief story. I want you to go deep in your heart and tell your grief story. But then I want you to also think about this. In my grief group, am I being taught to move along? Am I being taught to move some of my grief? Am I being taught the definition of grief? Am I being taught all of the things about grief that I need to know? Here's the deal, my friends. Grief is a broken heart. Grief is normal. Grief is natural. We will all grieve multiple times throughout our life. The first time you have a grieving experience will not be your last. It will not be your last. And each grieving experience will feel different. But if you are not being taught how to move through it, how to move this pain, how to understand it, how to process it, how to challenge it, how to finally complete it, the biggest part is completing, you're going to stay there. No ifs, ands, and buts. I will meet you on the road 10 years from now and you will still be a griever. I will meet you on the road 10 years from now and I will say your person's name and you will start crying. Now, I may cry if you say Austin's name. I might. But I'm crying from love, not from grief and pain. And getting stuck in grief is dangerous. It will affect all of the rest of your life. It can show up as anger. It can show up as anxiety. It can show up as fatigue. It will show up as isolation. It will show up as hopelessness. It will put you in an emotional freeze. It will put you in an emotional freeze. So here's a question. Are you healing or are you just surviving right now? Are you healing or are you just surviving? So I want to be very clear. I believe in the power of community. I especially believe in the power of grief community. I especially believe in the power of a woman community, a women coming together, calling themselves the Grief Gang, that are coming together to do their grief work. Surviving. She says, but it feels like I'm just surviving. I'm trying, surviving. I don't know how to heal. And then surviving. I believe in community. I've sat in rooms where grievers felt the sacred connection between one another, and they felt like that was enough to get them through. I watched women fall apart in front of each other. I've seen with my own eyes, for the first time, a griever tell her story real from her heart. I've seen the power of grief move in a room. I've seen grievers process the pain of a broken heart. But for me, that wasn't just enough. I wanted to take you all to the next level. I wanted to help you get to the next level. Why? Because that's what I wanted for Erica. Excuse me. Erica is my baby sister, who is the mother of Austin and Donovan. Austin died in 2006 and Donovan died in 2015. I wanted to see her healed. No way did I think in 2006 I was going to go out into the world and find out that there was nothing for grief. No way did I think that. And imagine my surprise when in 2006 I went on a mission to find out everything I could about grief and a broken heart, and I found that there was nothing. Imagine that. I know that you have a need for connection. I also know you have a need for education. I know you have a need for someone to break it down. I know you have a need for someone to say, here's grief, and here's what your brain is doing, and here's why this feels so bad, and this is why it's not moving. And let's look at it. Because right now, we're all like this. This is my grief. Oh, yeah. Okay. This is my grief. We're gently taking care of it. But I want you to come in and lay it down, and let's look at it. Let's examine it. Let's talk about it. But no one is saying that to you. They're not saying that. I wanted the perfect definition of grief, and I couldn't find it. So Erica and I wrote it. It's called The Griever's Guide. And if you go into the link in my bio and it says click here for hope, there you can download The Griever's Guide. It's the best definition of grief. And it's pretty serious. I mean, it's just straightforward. Grief is this. And that's how it breaks it down. But I also wanted the best grief support group. So I created that too. And that's called Grief Study Hall. Grief Study Hall is not just another support group that you come in and you just sit there and we talk about how your grief is this week. Actually, this week in Grief Study Hall, we opened up with, hey, how's your grief this week? And then each person got to share an ample amount of what I think was going on. It was amazing. But when that hour was over, I went to teaching because I want to give you something. And my beautiful friend Sandra does this thing where she asks these very deep questions at the end of the grief group. And I'm going to do a lesson on her question. I'm going to do her. I'm not going to say her question yet until I do the lesson on it. I don't just want your update. I want to know where your heart is. What is your heart feeling today? Why is it feeling that way? Why does your heart feel broken? Why is it so sad? Why are you stuck? Why are you stuck in that one part of the story? The day you got the phone call. Why is it that you keep telling me that story over and over again? Why this part of the story? Why are you stuck right here? She says, I love you too. I love you. I love those deep questions. It makes me, oh, if she's thinking it, other people are thinking it. Thank you. Thank you, Sandra. Seriously. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Grief Study Hall is a classroom. It's a classroom where we can look at this. Okay. But what happens when we've looked at it over and over again? What happens when we keep looking at it? There comes a time where you've got to do the work. And that work is the completion work. That is the work where you go and you do the full review of your person. You've got to look at what your life was like with that person. What's the good, the bad, the ugly? I'm going to show you a simple one. Austin was born on March 2nd, 2006. 96. And he died on June 17th, 06. Don't you guys love how I entertain myself sometimes? He was 10 years old. And he left way too early. He and I were supposed to walk a complete journey together. And if everything had gone the way I thought it should go, I'm feeling so much better, Fly Girl. I had the stomach flu this week. And one of my clients today, she had it from her grandchildren also. And she was like, please tell me when this ends, girl. I don't know, but it's bad. It's so bad. If it had gone the way I should have imagined it, I should have at some point left this earth and left Austin here. That's the way I thought it should be. That's the way it should be. I should walk an entire journey with Austin, and then I leave and Austin is still here, hopefully with his kids and maybe with a grandkid or two. But that's not what happened. Moments after Austin was born, I was at the hospital. I was helping Erica with breastfeeding. Erica's my sister. I'm 10 years older than her. Erica and I have a very much of a mother-daughter relationship. I'm 10 years older than her, and I fill in a lot and have for the last of our lives. That I have felt in for her. I'm sorry, I read Tracy's comment and it threw me off. Yes, this is called an out of order death, right? It came out of order. So I was at the hospital when he was born. When he was 18 months old, I'm just going to tell a couple of stories. When he was 18 months old, Erica went to Las Vegas. Now, she says she has a different version of this story, but I don't think it's true. She went to Las Vegas, and when she dropped him off for me to babysit him, he had a pacifier in his mouth. She said, can you get him off the pacifier? Her story is I said, hey, do you want me to get him off the pacifier? Either way, it was a fight. And he and I both decided that we were going to win. And he was like, you're not taking this pacifier. And I'm like, I am taking the pacifier. I tell you that story because at one point I didn't know what to do with him. So I gave him a sucker. And he is covered in head to toe in sucker. I step him up on the kitchen counter, and my husband gets the camera and takes a picture. And you can see me like looking right out the side. Today it has become one of my most favorite pictures of Austin and I. When Austin was 7 years old, he wanted to see if he could pee in the sink in the boys' bathroom. So he ran in the boys' bathroom and he whipped it out and he tried to pee in the sink. However, he wasn't tall enough, so he peed over said floor. He couldn't make said sink, so he peed in the floor. When the recess bell rang, all the little boys came running in the bathroom, and they fell all over said pee. Principal was livid. Erica called me from work. She's like, you have to go get Austin. So I went to get him. There's this moment where Austin all of a sudden decides that my husband is the richest man in the world. And everywhere he went, he would tell this story about him being the richest man in the world. I'm absolutely here to tell you that my husband is not the richest man in the world, but to Austin, he was. And the thing that's so funny is when Austin made up his mind about something, you couldn't change that thought. And so that was one of the things he would always tell the story. But on June 17th, 2006, my life was cut short with him. Hold on one second. I want to figure something out. June 17th, 16th, 15th, 14th. On June 14th, it was not uncommon for my husband to go by their house and pick up Austin, and Austin just go with him because he loved my husband. And I was in church. It was a midweek at church, and I was in church, and Austin came up to me out of nowhere. He just came running towards me. And I was like, he called me parrain, which is Godfather in French. And he said, parrain, I came today. And he was so excited. And I'm 5'3", but he was almost my height. And I put my finger under his chin. This is my favorite story about him. I put my finger under his chin, and Austin was starting to really pucker his lips for a kiss. I put my finger under his chin, and I gave him a kiss. And he ran off to where all of his friends were at our church. He ran off. And I was talking to my pastor's wife. And when I tell you guys, I did not turn back to my conversation with her, that I just watched him. I just watched him run off. To this day, I can only think that it was a kiss from God, that I got to watch him, that he came up to me, that he gave me that kiss. And I said to him, wow, you're getting so tall. You're almost as big as me. And he said, yeah, I know. And he turned around and he ran. And man, it's an amazing story. That was the last moment that I got to see Austin. Because on Saturday of Father's Day weekend, I got the call from Brittany. 3 hours after the call, we found out that Austin had drowned at the lake. This is my grief story. You see these things? I didn't tell you guys all of these things. There's a lot more to my story with him. But he's only 10 years old. So my story and my experience with him is not going to be as deep as somebody that's 30 years old. But when I did my work with Austin, I went into every single one of these stories and I looked at them. And I looked for anything that I felt I still needed to say to him, things that I still needed to tell him, things that I loved about him, things that I was upset about him with, things that still needed, that never got said. I love you. Thank you. Whatever those things are, you guys look at this. This is a different color because I completed the journey with Austin without Austin being here. I completed the journey. I completed my own personal journey with Austin without him needing to be here. What does completion mean? It means that I no longer have the pain of grief. Do I miss him? 100%. I wish that I think he'd be 29, 29-year-old Austin, got to do the math. I can't do it on there. 29-year-old Austin, I think maybe 30, huh? Next year he would be 30. So 29-year-old Austin was here. I wish that he was here. I wish that he was talking to me. I wish that he would hear to see where I am today. Do I wish I wasn't a grief specialist because of Austin? If I had the opportunity and it didn't have anything to do with Austin or Donovan or my dad or Sharon, and I was still a grief specialist, I'd do that. Yeah. But he gave me this. Now I can talk about Austin. I can look at photos of Austin. I can share about Austin. My heart is not absolutely broken. I don't break down every time I think of him. I don't cry. He's a joy to experience, a joy to share with you guys. That's completion. It's looking at your relationship in a different way, going through every aspect of your relationship. We have to be open to the truth. Thank you, Aida. She said that's a beautiful gift. We have to dive into teachings. We have to learn how to process this pain. Grief affects your brain. When I tell you that the world tells you lies about this grief, I'm telling you the truth. The world tells you lies about this grief. And I want to walk through the process with you. I want to challenge you to take a look at your thoughts and see what thoughts are holding you back. See what thoughts are keeping you locked in your pain. I challenge you in Grief Study Hall. And here's the biggest part. It is the thing that I give back to the community. It is my gift to the community to have this Grief Study Hall. And I'm telling you, it doesn't mean it's lightweight. It doesn't mean it's easy. I'm not giving you less. I'm not giving you my grief healing program, but I'm not giving you less. You have accessibility to me because I want to be the person, the heart with ears that you need to listen to. We have to start taking grief seriously. And your healing is possible, and it's possible through Grief Study Hall. Let me ask you a question. When was the last time someone actually taught you what grief was doing to your body and to your brain? When was the last time someone said to you, this is your brain and this is your brain on grief? This is your brain and this is how it's responding to the grief. This is your heart and this is why it feels that way. When was the last time someone taught you exactly what grief was? Suzanne says the last time you taught me on it. Grief support groups, grief communities are supposed to serve a purpose. They are supposed to give you connection. They are supposed to make you feel less alone. They are supposed to make you feel less alone. But here's the hard truth. You can stay in one for years and never actually heal. I don't want you to go into grief support groups and just stay there. Comfort is not the same as completion. Being comfortable is not the same as completion. Going through completion is hard. Doing the grief work is hard. I'm not going to lie. I will never sugarcoat that for you guys. As a matter of fact, I'm going to tell you this. When I was in my grief support group and my griever, my grief specialist, she probably hated me. She probably still hates me. When she says, I want you to do this, I was like, I'm not doing that. Debbie, I did that. I did say that. I was like, I'm not doing that. And I said it out loud in front of the whole group, and there were 25 people in my class. I'm not doing that. That doesn't even make sense. But the truth is, surviving is not the same as processing. Crying is not the same as working through the grief. I'm not telling you to stop going through your grief group. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that if you've been going there for more than a year and you're still feeling stuck, it's probably time for you to start working on the completion. You're probably ready for the completion. So let me break this down for you. Grief support is reactive. Grief education is proactive. Let me say that again. Grief support is reactive. Grief education is proactive. Support lets you say, I'm hurting. Education says, what's in this pain? What is this pain trying to show you? Where is it at in your body? How do you get to move it? Why haven't you sat in it? What color is it? Where does it hurt in your body? Let's talk about it. Why do you think you're feeling it? That's grief education. What if you didn't have this pain? Could you imagine this pain being a different way? Grief support lets you vent. Grief education equips you with the tools on how to vent. Grief support is a place that you go to get comfort. Education is transformation. I think a lot of you really want transformation. You really want to transform this grief into something else. If you're stuck in the emotional pain and thinking, but I go to my grief group every week, then I want you to hear me clearly. There's possibly that you, even if you're in grief study hall, it's possible that you're ready to do the grief completion work. You might be ready. And only you can say that. Some of the things I want you to make sure that you're doing is you're learning how to talk about your story and share your story. That you're learning how to feel it without drowning in it. You're learning how to stop pretending. You're learning how to stop resisting. You're learning how to stop avoiding. Avoiding, resisting, reacting, and pretending are the first 4 things that we do as grievers. You don't judge others in their grief. You don't compare your grief to someone else's. You learn how to be angry without shame. And you learn your own grief pattern. You understand what it means to be a mother grieving a child. What does it mean to be a daughter grieving a mother? What does it mean to be a wife grieving her husband? That they are all amazing experiences, but they are your experience. We don't compare them. What does it mean to be a wife who's lost her husband who still wears the ring? What does it mean that I haven't cleaned out the closet? What does it mean that I've had to sell the car? And then we go even deeper. We question the lies that we've been taught about grief. That grief lasts forever. That healing means forgetting. That's not true. That you'll never feel joy again. And then I want to give you the truth. You can miss them. You will miss them, and you will still heal. You can grieve deeply and still live fully. And you can feel peace again, but only if you're willing to do the work and go through it. Are you willing to do your healing work and go through it? Or are you going to wait for time just to do its part? That's the question, my friends. All right. I have a question here from my beautiful friend, Sandra. She says, I've learned that grief is very complicated. I'm going to say that I'm healing, sprinkled in with a little bit of survival. I've had it hard, but you have gone deep into it. She says, she's had it hard, but you have gone deep. She says, how do you know if grief is ruining your life? If you are unwilling to go to events, it's probably ruined your life. If you won't go to places that you and your person went to before, it's probably controlling your life, right? If you don't talk to people that you and your person used to talk to before, if you're avoiding those people, it's probably ruining your life. If you won't wear colors or clothes that your person wore or had, it's probably ruining your life. If you have a whole list of I don'ts that have to do with your person, it's probably ruined your life. If you won't drive down the street that the hospital was on, that they died on, it's probably ruining your life. And I wouldn't call it ruining. I would call it controlling. The grief is controlling you. When you don't live, when you're not living and you're not living fully, the grief is controlling you. The grief is controlling you 100%. If you're not willing to talk about it or say the person's name, the grief is controlling you. If you're not willing to say the word death or died, the grief is controlling you. If you can't go out and enjoy a cup of vanilla ice cream without having an anxiety attack, your grief is controlling you. Now, is that different than grieving? Yes. All of those same things will happen when you're grieving. All of those same things will happen when you're grieving. The difference is, are you going after the grief? Are you actively going after the grief? Are you actively talking about your grief? Are you actively working on your grief? That is the difference. That is the main difference right there. Are you actively going after the grief and the pain and the brokenness in your heart? At some point, you're going to outgrow the grief group. At some point, you've got to do the completion work. You've got to do the hard work. You've got to take a look at it. At some point, you have to. And I said this last night, and I'm going to say it again. Nobody is coming to save you. Your family members don't know how to help you. They don't know how to get you moved beyond the grief. Your friends think you are strong enough to do this. They think you are strong enough to handle this. The world is not making space for this deep grief. It wants you to perform and look healed for them. But you want to know the truth? I know that you're not okay. I know that you're barely surviving. This is where we started today. And every time you go to that group and tell the same story over and over again and don't get any teaching out of it, you leave wondering, is this really changing? Is this really changing my heart? Am I really moving beyond the grief and the pain? I was actively a griever for 8 months until I got into my first grief program. I was actively grieving for 8 months. And I went in to do the hard work. And I tell you right now, I could call Susan up right now. She was my grief specialist. And she probably would say, girl, you really put me through it, because I had all the questions. I needed to know every step of it, because I want to tell you guys this, because I was not there as the griever. I brought my sister. I brought my sister in. I was like, here's my sister. Her name is Erica. She's broken. Can you fix her? That's what happened. I brought in Erica for them to fix. So because I wasn't the griever, I pushed back. I didn't even know I was the griever until I took the class. I didn't even know I was the griever. Okay, friends, I want to leave you with a couple of things. Sunday, this pen is not working for me anymore. Sunday is at 8 a.m. on TikTok first. I'm going to do Sundays with Sharon. And that's going to be tackling Father's Day. I want to make sure you guys have a plan for Father's Day, right? So I want to make sure you have your plan coming up. If you are not grieving the loss of your father, come, because Father's Day can bring you grief, even if you're not grieving the loss of your father. If you are simply grieving, please forgive me. If you're grieving your mom, if you're grieving your dad, if you're grieving your fur baby, if you're grieving your child, come, because there will be a lot of information in there. So Sundays with Sharon. I'm going to go TikTok live first at 8, and then I'll join the regular group at 9. Sunday also, I've told you guys about this, and the link is in the Facebook group, the Grief School. Erica is going live, and she's doing a question and answer. I think it's going to be great. I will not be there, but I just want to show you, it's going to be on our own Facebook page, and it's at 6 p.m. I think it's going to be great. If you're a mother who's lost a child, please go to this. This is going to be great. If you're a person that has suffered the loss of your relationship due to divorce, go to this. If you're someone who's had a child out of wedlock, go to this. They're all Central Standard Times. Thank you. Okay. Tuesday is Grief Study Hall. It's every Tuesday from 1 to 3. You get me for 2 hours in a Zoom class. I can answer questions for you. I do a teaching. We break grief down. So that's there, Tuesday. On Thursday is Honor Society. That's for 1 to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. Is from 4 to 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. That's for anyone who's been through processing the pain of grief. It is a VIP group for anyone who's been through processing the pain of grief. Processing the pain of grief is a program that I teach about how to move through the process. Here's the deal. You get in Processing the Pain of Grief. You can click the link in my bio, and there you can find Processing the Pain of Grief. It's a 4-week self-guided video program taught by me, but every Thursday night, I'm breaking down one part of the grief definition and how to process. Every Thursday. Okay, here's the biggie. All of this is what you got coming up with me this week, plus the lives. So the lives, make a little note over here, a little box, are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday this week. And next week it will not be on Sunday. Also, in July 24th through the 28th is the Grief Intensive Weekend. And the information on that's going to be coming up soon. The Grief Intensive Weekend, which means, why is it intensive? Because I'm not having sound bowls. We're not getting a massage. I'm not going to rub your feet. We're not going to learn a new dance. We're going to break into this grief, break into the broken hearts, break into the pain, figure out what's there, and I'm going to help you remove it. And we're going to do that over a 4-day weekend. On the 5th day, we'll be on the Zoom. Okay, so keep that in mind, July 24th through the 28th. Yep, I got that right. I want to say something to each and every one of you. Flogger, I love it. I see you. Yes, Debbie says, is it going to be in Dallas? It will be in Dallas, right outside of DFW, at the Marriott Residence Inn. I see you. I know that you're in pain. And I know that I have the biggest hurdle in the world. And that hurdle is helping you to understand that grief serves a purpose and that there is another way to do this grief thing. I know that I have a big hurdle, but I'm willing to take on that challenge if you're willing to meet me halfway. Here's the other thing, my friends, that none of this grief is about me doing it for you, because I can't feel your pain. I cannot change what has happened to you, and I'm so sorry about that. And I also want you to understand that the thing that has happened to you is the worst thing possible. It is absolutely the worst. But you don't have to stay there. We can work on this and move it. And I'd be honored to see you in any one of these events or the grief intensive weekend. Because I promise you, we can get this grief moving. Okay, friends, thank you so much for allowing me to be here. TikTok, hang on. There's a couple questions in there I have to answer. I love you. I thank you. And I will see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. I will see you tomorrow for my live at 11 a.m. All right.